And so I began to talk about watching healthy entertainment. Notice I didn't say Christian entertainment because it isn't just about watching Christian stuff or non-Christian stuff. We need entertainment. We are created for some reason. I don't know. God might have to answer that question to me one day. Our soul needs entertainment.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Today's host is Geoffrey Whitt.
Hey there, welcome to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. I'm Jeff, and we're back for part 2 of our interview with Isaac Hernandez. Hi, Isaac.
Hi, how you doing?
If you missed the first half, I encourage you to go back, take a listen. You can hear his bio and find a lot more about him, his life, and the journey that God took him on to where he is today. And we're going to talk about a number of things, but I want to start with something you mentioned to me earlier about how God spoke to you about healthy entertainment. What did he tell you? And when was that? Tell us about that whole thing.
That was, oh my goodness, that must have been 6-7 years ago, maybe. What happened is I've been diabetic, or I guess pre-diabetic for a long time. And then I get a letter from my doctor one day, and I'm actually traveling. I'm somewhere directing a show or something. And I get a letter at home, and my wife texts the letter to me because the letter said, your A1C has gone up, I don't know, 10 point something, which is apparently very high. And so we're going to have to put you on insulin. And I got to tell you, if there's anything that gives me the heebie-jeebies is shots. Even when I would get, whatever kind of shot, if I hurt myself and they needed to give me a shot, I would go into panic mode. I would just absolutely, and nothing would make me go that panicky except for that. For some reason, I just would go into this real intense panic mode about being stuck with a needle. So I thought, I can't do that. I can't be giving myself a shot every day in the stomach. There's no way. And so my daughter-in-law sends me this text and she says, why don't you check this documentary out? And it was a documentary called Forks Over Knives, which has to do with the vegetarian lifestyle. It has to do with basically eating a healthy vegetarian lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so I saw the documentary, Forks Over Knives, and I thought, wow, some of those foods, you think of vegetarian that all you're going to do is eat broccoli and salads and whatever.
Right.
But this documentary showed there's a lot of really great dishes you can make without using meat product. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I can probably do that. And so I began the vegetarian lifestyle, which I did, by the way, for a year. I didn't remain a vegetarian. I've tried it twice. Mm-hmm. And it did make a huge difference. Not only did I lose a lot of weight, but my numbers started going down. I mean, my doctor sends me a letter a few months later, says, congratulations, you brought your A1C down to like 6 point something. So that was a huge thing. And then all of a sudden, I hear from God. And as I said in the first part, I've become very keen in hearing him. I don't have to have writing on the wall or audible, or I can hear it in my spirit. I heard him saying, that's wonderful, Isaac, but what about the health of your soul? And I thought, what? What do you mean by that? And so I began to kind of think about that a little bit, research it a little bit, and realized, or learned, I should say, that just the way your body reacts to what you feed it through your mouth, if you feed it nothing but hamburgers and hot dogs and ice cream and cake, and which is kind of what I used to love to eat, by the way, a lot of ice cream and cake and cookies, your body reacts to it in a very negative way, and it becomes very unhealthy, okay? But if you change that diet of what you eat, it then reacts to that and it starts to get healthy again. And so I realized that, see, there's 3 parts to your body. That's how we are like the Trinity. God said he made us in his image because he made us also a Trinity. He made us a body, a physical body. He made us a spirit, and he made us a soul. The soul is kind of what controls your thoughts, your emotions, as opposed to the spirit, which, by the way, is how you connect with God. You don't connect with God through your soul. You connect through your spirit, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I started to realize, wait a minute, what you feed your soul, which is what you listen to or what you hear, or rather what you see, is what you're feeding your soul. And we have become very unhealthy. Even as Christians, we become very unhealthy because we've been feeding our soul junk food. And we don't even realize it anymore where it's gotten to, because it's almost like the whole frog, boiling frog thing where you stick the frog in the water and you just turn up the heat a little bit. And it doesn't even realize that he's cooking himself.
Yep.
Okay. And so it's been like that. If you look back now at the content that you would watch on television and in movies versus what we watch now in television and in movies, you realize, how hot that water has become, and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And so I began to talk about watching healthy entertainment. And you'll notice I didn't say Christian entertainment, because it isn't just about watching Christian stuff or non-Christian stuff. We need entertainment. We are created for some reason. I don't know. God might have to answer that question to me one day, but we are created to need not only the spiritual food, we need to read our Bibles, we need to pray, we need to worship, but our bodies also need the other food, which is whatever it is we eat, but our soul needs entertainment.
Yeah. There's something about story that's just an integrated part of our lives.
And Jesus knew that, because he used stories more than he did sermons. At least that's what we read in the Bible. We don't read a whole lot of sermons, but boy, there's a bunch of parables, a lot of stories. And so it kind of became one of those things where I felt like people need to know this. People need to know that they need to really be careful with what they feed their souls. They need to feed it healthy entertainment, whether it be in their music, whether they be in their TV shows, in their movies, even artwork. They need to just start feeding themselves good, healthy entertainment so that their souls will be okay. It's not going to keep them from heaven. I don't believe that watching this stuff is necessarily going to keep them from heaven, but it sure is going to make them very unhealthy here on earth. And do we want to be unhealthy here on earth? Mm-hmm. I'd rather be very healthy so that I can really do what God wants me to do.
Yeah. It's interesting. You say this was more or less 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. You were already, of course, working for Parables.
Yes.
But it was not too long before you started Faith on Film. I wonder if that was an influence.
You know what? It's very likely. Again, God never gives me the full details. He just starts the process and takes me through the journey. I've always wondered, God, why don't you show me what the very end is? What would show me where the ultimate. And I think maybe it's because, number one, he wants me to walk by faith. Mm-hmm. And number two, I might get scared of what is the ultimate thing. It might be like, oh, this is too big for me. There's no way. Yeah. So he just puts me a step at a time.
Yeah. As we've been talking about healthy entertainment and storytelling, I know you've been involved with ICVM, International Christian Visual Media Association, and many of our listeners would be very familiar with their ICVM Storytellers Conference.
Right.
Just tell us about how you got involved and your involvement with that.
Let me see if I can remember when the first time was. I don't remember if it was when I was still with TVN and it was one of the conferences that Mrs. Crouch felt I should go to, or if it was after I was already with Parables. When I was with Parables, I was going to every Christian film festival and conference that there was. I was out at least once, if not twice a month. It was one of those times that I went to ICVM for the first time. And I just really, again, fell in love with the people there, with the filmmakers. My love for filmmakers is just pretty immense, to be honest with you. And so I started going. Eventually, the directors there saw my love for the conference and my love for the filmmakers that they asked me to be on the board. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the board, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago or so. Been in it ever since, and I just absolutely love it. One of the things that I really took charge of was the Crown Awards, and that's become a big focus on what I do. And again, for the same reason, is having spent time at TBN, one of the things that Mrs. Crouch always expected was excellence. Excellence in production, excellence and all that. So the Crown Awards was something that, they've been doing for like 52 years now. But it was small. It was just something that they would do there at the conference, at the Storytellers Conference, and they would award best film, the best evangelistic film, the best youth film, the best whatever. But it was done very low key. And me, being the former TBN director, I said, we got to kind of expand the way this is. And so I asked if I could take it over. Mm-hmm. They said yes. They gave it to me. And the first maybe 2 years, I think, that I did it, we still kept it there at the conference, but I made it to be more like a show with the animated visuals and music and all this stuff. So it became a little bit more like a show in the conference. And one thing that the conference used to do was you had to be a member to submit. So only members would submit. which I thought was not a good thing because it was really the same people winning every year. And, we would all pat ourselves in the back. Hey, good show. Hey, you did a good show. Congratulations. But it was always the same ones.
Yeah.
And so at one of the board meetings, I said, we need to open this up to everybody. There's no reason why it should just be members. We need to open it up to everybody. You might get some members out of that. If they're nominated and they come to the conference and they fall in love with the conference, and there you go. We'll get some new attendees and new members to the conference. But anyway, when they saw that, the president at the time, which was right about the time when we changed to a new president, because this one ended up going to work for Angel Studios. He went to NRB and suggested to them that maybe we create a partnership and do the awards at NRB. And of course, the advantage of doing that was that NRB already has some cameras and, and all the stuff that you would need to create a show, maybe not a full-blown show because they only use 2 cameras.
Yeah.
But still, they had the look, the stage, and all that stuff. And so they agreed to that, and we did a deal to do it for 3 years. And I put it together as a show. I directed it as a show. I edited it as a 2-hour special, and I offered it to all the platforms that, that our show Faith on Film is on. So I contacted all of them, said, hey, I produced this show. You guys interested in it? And you know what? Like 18 of them said yes. So the thing began to air. Now, this gives a lot more exposure to ICVM, gives a lot more exposure to the filmmakers that are nominated. Mm-hmm. And it just elevates the value of the Crown Awards.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing it for 4 years. This last one, I literally just finished last week. It's going to premiere. In fact, I don't know when this show will air, but it is premiering. As we're doing this, it'll premiere this weekend.
Okay.
But obviously, when this show comes out, it will already have, but it will be on several other platforms. Plus, we're going to put it probably on a YouTube channel that people can then access and go watch. It's the best one we've done yet. People were saying, wow, that was like the Oscars.
I can vouch for that. I was there. Jacqueline and I were there, of course, and then we saw you there, and a very highly produced, well-produced show, awards ceremony, and a lot of work. You've talked about how much work the editing and how much time that has taken, but even producing the show itself was no small feat.
There's a lot of pre-production. I literally started pre-production, I'm going to say about 3 months prior to the show itself. Because you know what? If I had a big team, if we had the money, because this is all done with very little money. By the way, I found out that like the big awards, like not the Dove Awards, but the Caleb Awards, it's $1 million budget.
Oh, wow.
Okay, it's $1 million budget. The director, who I know very well, he told me that he has a crew or a staff of about 200 to put the show together.
Oh, my goodness.
We were talking about it at NRB last year, and I said, man, I wish I had the resources that you have, because I just don't have that. He goes, Isaac, what you do is what's impressive because you do it with nothing. So I had to kind of do most of it myself because we don't have the staff or the money to do that. And so it takes me months to put together all the video work, all the different.
You're literally doing it yourself.
I do it all myself. I do it myself. I get a little help from the person that tells me who the nominees are and all that.
Of course, yeah.
But other than that, I got to create all the materials for it. And then when we show up at the show itself, the first 3 years, I mean, I was running around finding the presenters and doing all this stuff and everything. And this year, and I think this is why this was the best one yet, I had help. I realized, well, actually, they told me, Isaac, you cannot do this by yourself. So I said, okay. And I'm very bad at asking people for help, especially when it's volunteer help. And so, but I reached out to some people and they all agreed to help me. So this time I had somebody else that was finding the presenters, somebody else that was making sure that they were in place to go up next. And there was a more help during the show itself, but I still do all the pre. And then the post, same thing. I edit the show together. And normally, I don't offer it to anybody until I finish it myself.
Right.
So if it takes me 3-4 weeks, it takes me 3-4 weeks. Well, this time, a big network wanted to air the show. And they already chose a date before we even shot the thing. And so they said, we need you to have the show to us literally 2 weeks from the time that we shot it. I'm like, I have to have this thing done in 2 weeks. So yes, as soon as I came back, I had to edit it all to where it becomes a presentable show. And what I mean by that is the show takes like 2.5 hours when we do it. I have to cut it down to 1 hour and 58 minutes. So there's things that I have to cut out of it. And, you got to decide, what do I cut out? What do I not cut out?
Yeah.
And then add sound, add some more applause, because sometimes the applause is not as nice as it should be. Some laughter if somebody says a joke and there's very little laughter. So I add laughter. I add all the graphics, what we call the lower third. So that was a lot of work. But when it really comes down to it, I love it.
Yeah. It's great doing what you love, isn't it?
Yes.
Are you a filmmaker or storyteller with a passion for faith-driven narratives? The Purpose Film and Media Festival is calling all creators to showcase their work at this year's event, happening August 7th through the 9th, 2025. This 3-day festival is more than just screenings. It's a celebration of storytelling that inspires and uplifts. Join industry leaders like Cameron Arnett, Tyler Sansom, Gene Wenger, and Justin Overlander for workshops, keynote sessions, and networking opportunities. Whether you're a seasoned filmmaker or just starting out, you'll find a community eager to support your vision. Submit your film, script, or project today at purposefest.net and be part of a movement that celebrates purpose-driven media. Don't miss your chance to be featured among the best in Christian cinema. Purpose Film and Media Festival. Building the kingdom, one story at a time.
So let's take a few minutes here and go back. We told people in the first half we were going to talk about directing and producing in TV. Mm-hmm. You've done both. And I'd kind of like to give them a picture of what it's like. No doubt very different than, for example, directing film. And so let's just talk about it. You've directed and probably produced hundreds of TV shows, including very significant ones, the flagship show, Praise the Lord, for Trinity Broadcasting Network. Give us a little picture of what it actually looks like. What are the steps involved? What are you actually doing to direct a show like that?
I think prayer is the very first step.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
And let me take a little sidestep here on this one. I've been directing in Christian TV all my life, all right? But there was one year that I went to work for PAX TV. They hired me because they needed a live director and that would do live shows. And there's very few of those anymore. Everything is pre-taped. And so they hired me. And this was a secular set. It's not a Christian show. It was PAX TV with their flagship show. It was a show called Great Day America. And the first day, I remember I get on and I get my headset on, and all the camera guys outside have their headsets, and the floor director and everybody is all ready to go. And I said, I don't want anybody to be offended or anything. I'm used to saying a little prayer before starting a show. It helps me to calm down and just puts me in the right frame of mind. So if you all don't mind, I'm just going to say that, okay? I'm not telling you all you have to do it. I'm not doing it other than I need to do this for myself. And a friend of mine that was out on the floor said that everybody looked at each other like, what in the world is this? What is going on? And I just said a very simple little prayer. This was a daily show. By the end of the week, they were reminding me, Isaac, don't forget to pray.
Interesting.
Isaac. So yeah, prayer is one of the first things. But you know what? One thing that you have to really be aware of is not focused on just your one shot. See, in film, you have your little monitor of whatever the camera's looking at, and that's your focus, that one shot right there, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you're going to do another shot, that's a whole different time. Then you move the camera if you need to get another angle, and you focus on that one shot. In television, you are looking at approximately, depending on how big your shoot is, 3 to 7 to 8 to even 12 camera angles at one time.
Uh-huh.
So you have to be very good at multitasking. And so as you're directing this show, you're looking at everything. And then you have to really be good at paying attention to what's happening, who's talking. Because if somebody's talking and somebody else suddenly starts to talk and you're not paying attention to that, you're going to have somebody else on the screen where somebody else is talking.
Yeah.
You have to be really good at looking at multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I was very good at, probably because I was a musician, was in directing music shows. There's a bit of a difference in how you handle that as well, because now you're not just having various static shots. Now you're having a lot of moving shots. You have, pushes and pulls and pans, and if you have a jib, you got jib moves, and you got all this. So again, it's a different thing, and you want to be rhythmic.
Right.
You're not just moving back and forth. You kind of want to do it based on the rhythm of the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a musician, that became very easy for me to do. So I directed a lot of music shows.
You mean live shows or television shows?
Live and pre-tape, but a lot of, not music videos. We're talking about. Yeah, we're talking about like concerts, or Praise the Lord, of course, had the interview, and then they would break over to music, and then back to interview, and then back to another song, and it's back and forth like that.
Yeah.
And so you got to be very good at that. And then the other thing is that you have to be able to block out whatever commotion is happening behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was sitting on the video console looking at, all these monitors, and not everybody's good at this. Literally, you could have a party behind me, and it would not affect me at all. Because I was able to block that out and just concentrate on what's happening in front of me. Not everybody can do that. There was a director there that if anybody even started to talk back in the back, he just couldn't handle it, And so it's important that you be able to do that, because that's going to happen. Sometimes a producer will walk in and have some things to say.
So very different in that the director on a film, for example, would be more focused on the performance.
Right.
And capturing that performance, getting the best they can out of their actors. Whereas the director of a live show like you're talking about wouldn't really be focused on what the people in front of the camera are doing.
Nope. We're, doing in terms of, are they talking or they're not talking?
Right.
But
focused on them so you can do your job correctly. But.
Right. But other than that, you're more focused on the visual aspect of it. Make sure that they have the right headroom, make sure that that the shot looks proper and all that, but not on their specific performance.
Right. Cool. Okay. So what about producing a show like that? What does that role entail that's different from the director?
Producing is more, especially on television, is more the creation of a show.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, I was doing a show with this lady. Her name was Candy Statons as well. She was a singer. She had her own show on TBN. I was a director. And she would bring in a guest host for 6 shows, and then she would bring in a different one of the 6. So one day she brought this guy named Leon Patillo.
Yeah, now, I remember him. I had his albums.
Leon Patillo. Mm-hmm. Well, he became a very good friend of mine. So he got there, and when I took him to lunch, he said, "You know what, Isaac? I've always wanted to do this show, kind of like the Arsenio Hall show." He wanted to call it Leon and Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he had a lot of celebrity friends. I mean, a lot of big-time celebrity friends. So I went to Mrs. Crouch and talked to her about it, and she said, "Go for it. Let's do it." So in that sense, producing was putting that together, creating the show. Okay, how are we going to do this? Are we going to have a live band? And so I think this is different than producing film, because producing in film, you're actually in charge of a lot of the financial stuff and getting licenses and doing all this stuff. So that's completely different. For me, producing a TV show is just, okay, this is what I want the show to look like.
Right.
And so I did that. We shot quite a few episodes of Leon and Friends, which I did pattern it quite a bit like the Arsenio Hall show at the time. And so I didn't do as much producing, if you will, because at TBN, a lot of the hosts are their own producers. They'll come to TBN and they'll say, "Hey, I would like to do this show." And if they are somebody that, that the Crouches felt like, okay, they've got an audience, they already are singers or preachers or whatever.
Yeah.
So they produce their own shows. But some of the ones that I could say I produce would be like the Leon and Friends, and there's a couple others like that, but very different. So I don't have a lot of experience in producing TV shows. For me, it was more directing, which I did for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Although I produce my own show now.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I think we're probably ready to close out time-wise, but, we've had some very, very interesting stories, both in the last episode and in this one. A different angle for us on our podcast, and so I really appreciate that. Every time we can get someone who is in a different area of film, or in this case, primarily TV, and we all learn something more. We all learn from each other, and so I really appreciate the things we've learned from you today, and hearing your story, the inspiration that comes from, of course, how God moved in your life. And I'm really glad you took this time with us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
But once again, can you please tell us primarily, how would you like people to find you? Faith on Film? Are there other things you would like to direct us toward?
You know what? I'm going to give, if it's okay with you, I can give my personal email address. I don't mind people reaching out to me.
You certainly can, if you wish.
Well, it's very simple. They can reach me at Isaac, and that's ISAAC 858, Isaac 858 faithandfilm@gmail.com. And anybody can reach out to me and ask me a question or whatever they want to say. But of course, the big thing for me would be that they maybe go to our YouTube channel, which is Faith on Film TV. The URL is basically youtube.com/@Faith on Film TV. And you know what? Subscribe. Hit that little subscribe button, because we really could use it. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not one of those subscriptions you got to pay for. Just go subscribe and you're part of what we're doing.
Yep. And the website?
faithonfilmtv.com. Faith on Film TV. And make sure it's Faith on Film, not in film, folks. faithonfilmtv.com.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes, and I encourage everyone to check it out.
Wonderful.
And once again, thank you, Isaac, and God bless you in all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. If you've been enjoying this podcast, take a moment to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you can leave a tip at faffpodcast.com/support. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.